So, before we talk about winter or the next season or what's coming next, I wanted to take a second to just name where I think a lot of people are right now. You might be having a sensation or having experienced something where you're saying, I just kind of feel like I'm not necessarily moving light speeds ahead towards something, but I'm also not rested yet either. I'm just sort of in this sort of in between space. And that is called transition. And transition is not a failure to arrive. Transition is something that has its own rhythm and its own purpose and its own pacing. And what usually happens here is that expectation shows up and it comes before pacing. And because pacing isn't settled, we really can't move forward with expectations yet. So today is not about tools and it's not about planning, it's about sequencing because pacing comes before expectation. And if that sounds like a relief to you, then you are probably the exact person that this conversation is for. So let's talk a little bit about what transition feels like. And this is the moment where you're sensing something that you kind of can't put your finger on. And it might sort of kind of feel like not necessarily urgency, but not stillness either. Just sort of this kind of in between place. You might realize that your sleep is a little bit off, or you're feeling a little strange, or even sometimes food doesn't kind of really, appeal to you as much. I want to say that this is a real state. It's a real thing that we feel. And it is not an indication of failure and it's not an indication that something is wrong. It is a real place. Transition isn't something that clicks into place. It isn't something that, slides and clicks and then you're done. It is something that arrives over time. It is something that has to settle and um, you can't choose when that settling happens. So when we're talking about expectation, especially when we're talking about the winter and it's we're approaching the end of the year and I need to get myself together and do all the things and all of that. Sometimes expectation, when we engage with it, when we're in transition, before transition has completed and settled, expectation gets in front of that. And that's because we feel this desire to do something, to take action, to take steps, to make plans, right? We're planning all these meals, we're planning all these things that we're going to do, or we're thinking about using the time. Maybe we're on a break, maybe we have a little bit of a window or something, and we're thinking about how to maximize that or how to optimize that or something like that. The challenge is not that expectations are a problem. That is not the problem. The challenge is that expectations that show up before our system is ready for expectations bumps us out of the moment that we're in, this moment of transition. Transition exists for a reason, it has a purpose. So I want to say that it's not wrong to have expectations, right? That's not a problem. It's that expectations that arrive too early become disruptive. They are not productive. They're not things um, that we can travel with, sort of in partnership with. They become things that get in front of us and drag us. So the point here is that expectation is not the problem. It is that we need sequencing. So when we look up and we have inadvertently reversed the sequence, reversed the order of things, and we have expectations in front of our pacing being settled because we're still in a season of transition, what happens is we end up drifting and we look up and we're actively involved in something, but we did not start. We don't have a sensation inside of ourselves that was settled before we got started. Like, I think you can relate to that moment of like, I've started something, but I don't remember settling first. I don't remember feeling settled before I got started. And what happens with that is we end up trying to regulate by doing instead of being regulated first and then doing something. The way that we regulate before doing is by noticing. That is what the moment of transition, that space, that time of transition, that's what it's for. That's why transition is not lock into place and then let's get going. It is this broad moment, this expansive place that gives us the opportunity to settle and to notice and to settle by noticing. So that might look like sitting with one task instead of trying to plan a bunch of tasks. That might look like just letting the day be the day without trying to maximize it and turning into something and make sure that we did all the things, just existing, just letting the day be the day. It might look like that. Giving ourselves a chance to settle and notice so that we can be regulated before we move into the next thing. Sometimes we can be tempted here to try to give this season like a definition, like a purpose, like an intention. Like, I'm in transition, and so I am going to name an intention for this and sit down and give it a purpose and then seek out to accomplish. But do you see how that feels on the inside? It kind of feels like doing before settling because we didn't notice. You get what I'm saying? So we have this moment, this time, this space here. It's a beautiful space. It can feel a little unsettling because when we haven't arrived, but we're also not rushing. We're kind of in this limbo, right? But that's okay. This is not about applying a label to this time and an intention to this time. This is just about noticing. It's just about being in the transition and noticing ourselves in this space. You might realize that your actual energy, your actual capacity, your actual spaciousness and attention is different than maybe what you thought it was. And whatever that is perfectly fine. Like, your capacity, energy, spaciousness, whatever that is what it is. And we don't need to sit in judgment of that. It's fine for it to just be what it is. As you are noticing your actual energy, capacity, spaciousness, all of those things, one, whatever you're noticing is accurate. Okay? Whatever you're noticing is accurate. And two, it's okay for your real world pace to match that internal pace. So during this time of I'm not there and I'm not there, I'm not like rushing, but I'm also not settled, not really resting either, right? In that space, the noticing, it's the opportunity to identify what is my actual pace. What is that? And that actual pace is accurate and aligning with and following that pacing. And in all of that, it might sound like I'm saying take a bunch of action and do a bunch of things. But that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that noticing is the thing, that simply noticing is the thing, and that holding the information, what you noticed, that is enough, that holding is enough. And I know it can be challenging to hear that transition is not about doing things. The thing is the noticing. The thing is, oh, I noticed that. Hmm. If there's one thing that I want to leave you with, it is this: you do not have to arrive at the next season before you're ready to be there. You don't have to get to that because it's time to get there. Okay? You don't have to do that. Transition is something that you experience. It is not something that you solve. It is something that you sit with and you notice, not something that you do to bring to conclusion. And if you find yourself wanting plans and tools and strategies and things, let that just be information. That is something that you're noticing. I really want plans and tools, and I want to sit down and, not sitting in judgment of that, just letting it exist, just noticing it, maybe writing it down, not to be reread and trying to sit down and figure out what to do about it, but just, it's interesting. That's what I'm kind of reaching for on the inside. No judgment. So, in this transitional space that you find yourself in, let pacing come first, and orientation will be settled because pacing came first. It is when our rhythm stabilizes that the next thing outfolds in front of us because we've come into contact with our own pacing and with our own tempo. And that is really what's real, right? And that's the thing about being in transition. It is staying with what's real, not urgency, not expectation, but letting pace get established and we can stay with what's actually real.